roast pork, perfect crackling, and homemade applesauce. Let's get into it. This is a 1.5 kilogram or about 3¼ pound boneless pork shoulder, which is a fantastic joint for roasting and gives the best crackling IMHO. There's quite a bit of connective tissue in here, so we'll need to cook it pretty low and slow, which will yield a juicy and delicious roast while giving the skin time to get beautiful and crisp for that perfect crackling. For the method we're using today, you don't have to score the skin, and in fact, inexpert scoring, going too deep basically, can actively work against good crackling, but I got this cut from my local butcher who'd already done a bit of scoring for me, and that's fine, I won't do any more. The key to great crackling is getting rid of moisture, and to do that I'll first make sure any obvious moisture is gone. I would usually use kitchen paper for this, but I forgot to buy it, so a clean towel will do the job. I'll just make sure to put it straight in the wash after to avoid any chance of cross-contamination. Once any obvious moisture is dealt with, we need salt, and plenty of it. This is about 20 grams, which I know seems like a lot, but it's absolutely critical to getting the crackling we need, so don't skimp here. I'll add a small amount of oil just to lube things up a bit, and then I'll rub that salt into the skin, making sure to get it into all the little nooks and crannies and those scores that were already there. The more evenly we can spread this salt now, the better. This is looking great, so I'll just set it aside for 30 minutes to rest at room temperature while the salt begins to work its magic. In the meantime, I'll start getting a roasting tin ready, and for that I'll just roughly chop a couple of brown onions. There's no need to peel these, but you can remove any already loose outer layers. Watch out for any mould in those as well, which often happens thanks to the way supermarkets store and transport their onions. Just wipe off any that you see, and as long as it hasn't penetrated right into the onion, they're good. So, onions roughly chopped into slivers. I'll grab 2 bulbs of garlic and slice those in half across the cloves. I'll then just toss all of that into a tin that's big enough to comfortably fit the pork. To that, I'll add a little wine. I like white wine for pork. You could go ahead and use cider, chicken stock, or even plain water. The meat will add a lot of juice to this as it roasts, and whatever liquid you go with here, you should end up with a great head start on your gravy. So at this point, I'll just remember to hit that thumbs up button and then subscribe. Have you been messing with this? No? Once all that salt has had half an hour to do its thing, I'll get the oven on to preheat to 160C or 320F. I'm using convection, but it's the same for conventional ovens. And then I'll give the meat another gentle pat to remove any obvious moisture that's been drawn out by the salt. I'll add a little fresh salt just to replace any we lost. Not too much more is needed here, just a small pinch, and then I'll set up my meat thermometer, link in the description if you don't have one. The temperature to aim for depends on your desired level of doneness. For medium, you want about 60 degrees C or 140F, and for well, go for about 70 degrees C to 160F. Medium pork should be totally safe nowadays, as long as you get it from a reputable source. This was not the case for many years, but modern agriculture and animal husbandry practices have eradicated the pathogens that used to cause problems. Of course, in other parts of the world, this might not be true, so definitely check the guidance where you live, or just go for well done. But here in the UK, or in the US, at least, you should be good. I'll load that into my oven, and because I'm using the fan, I'll immediately lower the temperature to 140C or 285F, and then I'll set a timer for an hour and 30 minutes, or an hour and 20 if I'm going for medium, and then I'll just walk away, go and do something else while this hangs out and does its thing. An hour and a half later, I'll pull this from the oven and see how things are doing. This is looking great. It's hit 51C or 120F internal, and the skin has visibly started to dry out. I'll add a little more wine or whatever liquid you're using at this point to prevent it completely evaporating while we crackle that skin. Now, to make that happen, we need heat and lots of it. So I'll turn my oven up to 240C or 470F and turn on supercook mode. Supercook is a mode my oven has that turns on an extra element that sits within the fan assembly, essentially turning it into a forced air oven. Different brands call this different things. Check the manual for yours, and don't worry if you don't have it. Just crank the heat right up like I did, and be sure to turn the tray around 180 degrees halfway through the next cooking phase. With that set up, I'll return the pork to the oven for 30 minutes or so until the thermometer hits the target temperature and the crackling is crispy and golden. Like this. I'm super happy with this. I'll just move that over to a plate to rest. Cover it loosely with foil if you like, but don't wrap it up. The steam will ruin the crackling. And I'll make a start on my applesauce and gravy. For the applesauce, I've got 2 good-sized cooking apples. These are Bramleys, which are more on the tart side. I don't know if you can get these overseas, and I don't know what you'd replace them with if you can't. If you do know, let me know down in the comments. So I'll just grab my peeler and quickly peel these, and then I'll chop the flesh from the core and roughly slice it up. There's no need to be precious about the size. These will break down completely by the time we're done. Next, I'll measure out 40 grams each of butter and sugar, and then I'll add both to a pan over a medium heat and let the butter melt, stirring to combine. Once the butter's melted, I'll add the apples, give everything a good toss to ensure the apple is evenly coated in the butter and sugar mixture before covering it with the lid and leaving it alone over low heat for about 15 minutes. That just gives us time to make our gravy, and I'm keeping it simple today. I'll just make a basic roux by melting another 50 grams of butter into a pan and stirring in 50 grams of plain or all-purpose flour. Now I want to brown this slightly for extra flavour, so I'll stir that constantly over a medium heat for 2 to 3 minutes until it takes on a bit of colour, and then I'll stir in 500 millilitres, about a pint of good quality chicken stock. There's no need to do this in batches, just add it while stirring and be sure to get any bits of roux that hide in the corners of the pan. Once all that is added, I'll add in the wine and the roasting juices from the tin, making sure to press the onions and garlic a bit to release those juices and their awesome flavour. And then I'll give all that a good stir to combine and let it come up to the boil, stirring occasionally until slightly reduced and thickens to a saucy gravy consistency. Once that's done, I'll check the seasoning. You'll probably find this is already salty enough thanks to the salt from the meat, so I'll just add a few twists of freshly ground black pepper, and that's done. By now, your applesauce will probably have had 15 minutes and should be cooked down so that the apples break up completely when you stir. It should also have taken on a little bit of colour. If not, feel free to increase the heat to medium and give it a minute or two, but be careful. The sugar will easily burn, so move it around often. Once done, you should have a delicious fruity applesauce that's rich and sweet but also tart at the same time. To carve the pork, I'll bring it back to the board and using a sharp knife, I'll just break through that crackling and slice up the meat. If you prefer, you can remove the crackling in one piece, which does make for easier carving, but sadly less impressive YouTube videos. However you slice it, this pork is juicy, tender and delicious, and that crackling is crispy, salty and just downright awesome. You're going to love this one, folks, and with this recipe in your back pocket, you'll never have to worry about dry pork or disappointing crackling ever again. Plate this up with your choice of vegetables, smother it with that fantastic gravy and finish with a spoonful of that amazing applesauce, and then dig in for a Sunday lunch that you and your guests won't forget in a hurry. I hope you give this a try soon, folks, and let me know how it went down in the comments. Thank you for sticking around and keep on cooking.